You're more than likely upset, or at least disappointed, with the turn Star Wars has taken in the last few years.
Definitely since 2017. Hey! Bork. See, I scare away bad man.
Good dog. Little Snot is so classless he even disrespects Mark Hamill to his face in public.
I have to be really careful. People say, was it difficult to pick up and wield a lightsaber again? And I go, do I pick up a lightsaber?
Is it difficult acting in this movie? Am I in this movie?
I can promise you my part is twice as big as it was in Force Awakens. What's 2 times 0?
Question there in the back.
What's 2 times 0?
But we're not here about him.
No, God!
We're here about Ahsoka. Obviously, I had high hopes, as we all did. We all wanted to see this succeed. While the first few episodes started off kind of slow,
Comatose.
I felt like each episode was getting better and better. We were starting to really ramp things up and get going. And then came the finale. And the last vestiges of coherent storytelling went right out the window. I actually have a theory that there was a method to the madness, but I'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's look at some of the more nonsensical highlights. The very first words of the episode are that they're done with the transfer.
Good. Bring the Eye of Sion out of high orbit so that we may begin the interlocking procedure.
That should have been Thrawn's cue to leave. Take the Chimera up to the ring, dock with it, and get out of there. You have to go that direction anyway, just go.
And then he immediately tells Elsbeth not to underestimate the Jedi.
He tells her that, then immediately contradicts himself by not leaving immediately and putting as much distance between them as possible. The thing that really gets me is that all it would have taken is just one line of dialogue. Something like how the ship is too damaged to achieve orbit and they need the Eye of Sion to assist. That would have done the trick. We would have been happy with that. But no, instead, our tactical genius looks like a complete idiot.
It's like Filoni was stretching for time.
I think he is, actually, and I'll get to why in a moment, but it dovetails perfectly into my second example. In our very next scene, we find our heroes cruising with the turtle dudes, the ship hovering over them protectively. Why?
Bruh.
The second they found Ezra, they should have bolted, if for no other reason than the turtle dude's protection. Thrawn doesn't want them, he wants Ahsoka. Their staying with the turtle dudes is putting them in danger.
Not very Jedi of them. And where were they going?
Right you are, Doge. Where were they going? What were they doing? Their goal is to get back to the Chimera and stop Thrawn. Why are they twiddling their thumbs and endangering the natives?
I can't remember the last time you yelled at the TV.
Absolutely sloppy writing. And then Thrawn decides he's going to waste 2 of his TIE fighters chasing down our heroes. It's not like he's going to get more when he gets back home.
Apparently stealth TIE fighters.
And that's another thing. How did they get the drop on him? Huyang's flying the ship. He can't see them coming. There's no alarms. And then Sabine decides to ram them from the sky, and neither one of them had the sense to veer off.
I know they're stormtroopers, but come on.
Let me pause for a moment for a couple of side gripes. You're going to cast the kick-ass guy from The Expanse and hide him in a stormtrooper costume, even if it is a cool one?
Weird.
Insert Daniel Craig joke of your choice here.
A lot of wasted talent on this show. Also, the zombie stormtroopers. Yeah, the eyes looked really cool, but anyone who's been a fan of Star Wars for any length of time has seen this diagram before. So with the glow we're seeing here, that would place the zombies' eyes... Show them, Doge. That's yeah. But while we can nitpick this thing all day, there's a couple specific errors that I think might actually point to what Filoni is actually up to.
Or hope he's up to.
You're right, I fully admit that this might be wishful thinking on my part, but it does fit with some of the other facts that we know. Remember, years ago when this show was in pre-production, the rumors started flying around that Filoni was going to essentially eliminate the sequel trilogy as we know them by using the world between worlds in this show to change history. Maybe she thought it was beneath her, but Kathleen Kennedy never really involved herself in the animated shows. That indifference carried over into The Mandalorian, but once that became popular, she started sticking her nose in, and as a result, we got season 3. Assuming that the rumor was true, Kennedy obviously wasn't going to allow him to retcon the sequel trilogy. That was her baby. And Filoni also needed her to sign off on his idea for a Mandoverse movie, or even trilogy.
But Filoni also saw the writing on the wall for her future.
Exactly. He found himself in this weird middle space where the production of his show would overlap with her slow, painful exit. So he had to appease her while still trying to drive the show where it needed to go. Here's one of those potential clues. Sabine's summoning of the lightsaber was fine, I'll give them that, especially for the arc of her character on this show. But the massive force push of Ezra into the Star Destroyer, she went full Rey Palpatine at that point, which I feel like was a concession to Kennedy.
Or something he knew would appease her at least.
Right, you are, Doge. Meanwhile, what we took to be the main plotline of the show was actually a distraction for Kennedy, because the true narrative of the show was hidden deep in the background, running at a snail's pace. And that's Baylan finding the world between worlds.
The only reason I'm here is to secure the future. One must destroy in order to create.
Baylan says explicitly that he wants to stop this cycle.
As you get older, look at history. You realize it's all inevitable. Fall of the Jedi, rise of the Empire. It repeats again and again and again. What I see is the beginning, so I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
Filoni is directly addressing the sequel trilogy here. We know that the coming rise of the First Order is a continuation of that cycle. So given what we know of future events, one of two things must be true. Baylan either fails and the First Order rises, or he succeeds and the First Order doesn't happen, or at least not in the way that we know it. Baylan is Filoni's trigger mechanism for retconning the trilogy.
You're saying the possibility exists that Filoni took the meat out of his show to push into a second season to get it past the point Kennedy would be out the door.
Right, he just kicked the can down the road. Just look at what's left. The show is slow, but he still had to fill out 8 episodes. The characters are literally meandering. They're hanging around areas they need to be leaving.
He's stretching.
He's a meat stretcher. He'll stretch your meat.
To an obnoxious degree. And more than that, he put the full brakes on the Baylan storyline with he and Shin reduced to non-dialogue cameos at the very end of the last episode.
Some have claimed the show's the way it is because he writes for animation.
That's not how that works. It's the opposite of stretching, because when you're writing for animation, you have to be absolutely precise, because so much work goes into the animation process. Everything you write has to be as efficient as possible. No wasted words, no wasted movements. If he was still writing for animation, the show would reflect that. But does that mean Filoni is off the hook? Absolutely not. Let's assume that my theory is correct. There are still a lot of important details he easily could have covered just with exposition alone that would have helped fill that time.
Like the why the sexy hat?
He could start at the beginning. The last time we saw Ezra and Thrawn on Rebels, the Purrgil had whisked them away to this galaxy. So what happened when they got there? Ezra tipped his Uber and said, "I'll get out here"?
Out of gas.
Maybe it was aliens. They experienced a decade of missing time.
They're all aliens, dork. We get absolutely zero information about anything that happened in those missing 10 years. You know, it's dangerous enough that the bulk of the characters in this show are going to be completely new to the casual audience, but Filoni offers almost no backstory to bring people up to speed, or any new info to fill in the gaps for the fans who did know who these people were. That would have easily taken up the time and filled in a lot of blanks.
Instead, he creates more blanks.
Exactly. We even literally get the exact same treatment with Thrawn and Ezra again when they get back to their original galaxy. What happens when they get there? How does Ezra steal an Imperial shuttle and get off the Chimera without being noticed? How does he find Hera's fleet that didn't even exist when he left? Why is he still wearing the stormtrooper armor when he steps off the ship?
He would have taken off the helmet at least as soon as he was clear of the Chimera.
If for no other reason, just to see better, we know at the very least he wouldn't have gotten off the shuttle with it on. Whatever tension they thought was being created in that moment was blatantly stupid.
So say we all. So say we all.
And then we get another really, really weird, awkward reunion scene with no joy or hugging or human emotion. And for some reason, the show was just filled of awkward reunions. It's not how these characters should be behaving at all. Now, this is probably an example of his animation experience working against him. Before, voice actors and animators would bring the needed humanity to his words, the facial expressions, but in a live environment, it looks like he's out of his element.
Everyone's emoting like used office furniture.
All of that aside, if my theory is correct, it's the biggest gamble of his career because it's completely dependent on either getting a second season of Ahsoka to get to the meat of the story or to the presumed Heir to the Empire film that promises to be the culmination of the Mandoverse.
Since the odds of a season 2 seem slim, he might be forced to address it in whatever series gets greenlit next, like Mando season 4.
That's a good point. Good doge. Of course, the worst part of all of this is the loss of the best part of the show, Ray Stevenson. He owned every scene he was in, and I wanted more. He was no stranger to the Star Wars universe, having voiced Gar Saxon in the Clone Wars.
And Volstagg in the Thor series.
But I highly recommend you check out one of the best films I've seen in the last few years, RRR. It's an absolutely bonkers Bollywood film that features Rey and the psycho Nazi chick from The Last Crusade. It's a mind-blowing thrill ride filled with the raw, unmitigated joy and adventure that Hollywood lost a long time ago. Let me know what you think of my theory in the comments and stay fresh, cheese bags.